in the most pivotal federal election that we have had in our lifetimes.
Yes, it is. Can we save Canada in 35 days? I'm going to go right to Pierre Poilievre, who's speaking right now, and we will have the announcement from Carney apparently around 10 or 15 after 12. We've got lots to talk about today.
Massive bureaucracies that don't let builders build. So for the first time in the history of Canada, our young people cannot afford homes. Open borders, liberal crime and drug laws have unleashed violence, disorder, and deadly overdoses. 10 years of Liberals hiking taxes and blocking resource projects has pushed $500 billion to the United States, given us the worst growth in the entire G7. And all of this was before the tariffs of Donald Trump. What's more, our nation is more divided than ever before because the liberal, radical, post-national, borderless, and globalist ideology has weakened our nation. Now, desperate for a fourth term, Liberals have replaced Justin Trudeau with his economic advisor and hand-picked successor, Mark Carney. But a Liberal is a Liberal is a Liberal. It's the same old Liberal MPs, the same Liberal ministers, the same Liberal advisors, the same Liberal elites, the same broken Liberal promises of the last 10 years. We cannot afford another lost Liberal decade. We need to put Canada first for a change, with a new Conservative government to axe taxes, reward work, unleash entrepreneurs, harvest our resources, make things here, build homes for our youth, secure our borders, rebuild our military, honor our history, and raise our flag. It starts with a big bring it home tax cut on work, investment, energy, and home building. We'll lower taxes to bring home businesses and to make sure Canadians bring home more of their paychecks. And that starts with axing the carbon tax, the entire tax, a tax that the Liberals, with Carney's enthusiastic support, brought in for 7 years and increased over and over, a tax that is still in law, despite the government hiding it from gas stations for the 30 days leading up to the election, a tax they will bring back bigger than ever before if reelected. And on this point, Mr. Carney and Mr. Trump are in total agreement. They both want to tax Canadian industry. Mr. Carney's carbon tax and Donald Trump's tariffs will destroy Canadian industry, pushing jobs south. But I won't let that happen. A new Conservative government will repeal the carbon tax law, and we will axe the tax for everyone, for everything, for good, forever, and for real. We will also take the sales tax off new homes and incentivize municipalities to speed up permits, free up land, and cut development charges so that we can build homes and restore the dream of home ownership. We will bring home our resource jobs for a change. That means repealing Liberal No New Pipelines Law C-69, lifting the Liberal cap on energy that Carney still supports, quickly approving LNG plants, mines, and other major projects. New Canada First building zones will pre-approve sites for construction so that businesses can get busy working and hiring and building and developing and spend no more time filling out paperwork. With a national pipeline like the one the Liberals blocked not long ago, we can go around the American market, send our oil to Europe, break European dependence on Putin, and break our dependence on the United States of America. A double win, 2 birds, 1 stone. We'll knock down interprovincial trade barriers to have one big, open, free market across our country, moving goods, services, people, nationwide. That will bring home our jobs and bring us together. We'll also bring home safety to our communities by stopping the crime for a change. That means repealing catch and release Liberal laws and imposing mandatory jail time on repeat offenders, banning hard drugs, and offering recovery to bring our loved ones home drug-free. We'll cap immigration and stop the radical Century Initiative, which seeks to almost triple our population to 100 million people. A crazy idea still endorsed by Liberals and their top advisors. That will end when I am Prime Minister. We will also keep fraudsters, and criminals out of our country, and we will crack down on bogus claims. On immigration, like everything else, we will put Canada first for a change. Our troops will have support. Our military will be rebuilt. We will have new icebreakers, new fighter jets, new surveillance aircraft, a brand new base, the first base in the Arctic since the Cold War in Iqaluit. And we will back our veterans to ensure they have good lives after they fought for our country. They remind us that Canada is tough, rugged, strong, hardy. We don't go looking for a fight, but we're ready if one comes looking for us. None of this will be easy, but making and defending Canada wasn't easy either. And with change, there's hope. So I say to the struggling single mother who worries how she will feed her kids, hope is on the way. To the 35-year-old still living in mom's basement but dreaming of owning his own place and starting a family, change is on the way. To the seniors choosing between eating and heating. And to all those who wonder what happened to the country that they knew and love, change and hope are both on the way. A new Conservative government will restore Canada's promise, the promise that anyone from anywhere can do anything, that hard work gets you a great life in a beautiful home, on a safe street under a proud flag. To preserve that flag and uphold its promise, we must work together, fight together, and win together for our people, for our land, for our home, for Canada first, for a change. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now take questions. On va maintenant passer aux questions.
Good morning, Mr. Poilievre.
We'll be going back to Pierre Poilievre in a minute here. Just to update you, Carney is inside Rideau Hall with the Governor General. He'll be emerging apparently shortly. We'll be there with that. Pierre Poilievre is just taking some questions right now, so let's go to that.
You can be respectful and firm, and I believe we have to be both. I will insist the president recognize the independence and sovereignty of Canada. I will insist that he stop tariffing our nation. And at the same time, I will strengthen our country so that we can be capable of standing our own 2 feet and standing up to the Americans where and when necessary. That's what it means when I say, let's put Canada first for a change.
En français.
In French?
Il faut travailler en esprit.
So yeah, he's doing a campaign speech. It's very like the speeches he did at the Axe the Tax rallies, which I'm sure many of you attended. I've reported on about 3 or 4 of them. Worthwhile. This is the kind of speech he needs to do. He got to inspire people because Mark Carney is not inspirational. Mark Carney cannot inspire. He is not a leader. Mark Carney is a manager. And there's a huge difference. Anyone who served in the military can tell you the difference between a manager and a leader. A leader inspires people to do a job. It inspires people to take an objective, whether it's that hill, whether it's that city, or whether it's that war. And that's what we're facing right now. We need a leader who can effectively talk to Donald Trump. We'll go back.
Premier Danielle Smith, Alberta Premier Danielle Smith, has asked the U.S. administration to hold off any further action because it benefits the Liberals politically right now, and says that your direction would be more in sync with the U.S. administration's direction. Do you think her comments are appropriate, and what is your response to them?
Well, my response is that the president has said that he thinks it would be easier to deal with a Liberal, and with good reason. The Liberals have weakened our country. They've blocked resource projects, raised taxes, driving our jobs south into the hands of the Americans. $500 billion of investment has fled our country. They blocked a pipeline that would have allowed us to go around the American market. They've killed LNG liquefaction plants, forcing us to sell all of our natural gas to the Americans at huge price discounts. They've weakened our military and our borders. All of that plays into the hands of President Trump. He's been very blunt that he wants a weak Canada that he can target. And Liberals, after the lost Liberal decade, have made our economy and our country weaker and more divided, just like Trump wanted. Electing Liberals to a fourth term will weaken our country still. That is why we need to put Canada first for a change, with a new Conservative government that will axe taxes, unleash our resource production, build pipelines, secure our border, rebuild our armed forces, and stand up to Donald Trump from a position of strength. Thank you.
En français?
There's no question in my mind that Donald Trump is playing a game here with endorsing Mark Carney. And Poilievre is right. It will be easier to face down Mark Carney than Pierre Poilievre. Pierre Poilievre's not going to make any demands of Donald Trump. If Trump wants to impose tariffs, he's going to impose tariffs. And retaliatory tariffs from Canada is just going to make the situation worse. And Poilievre has got to become attuned to that, because the only one I'm hearing saying that is Maxime Bernier, that counter tariffs, retaliatory tariffs are just taxes on Canadians. They just hurt Canadians. They're not going to really hurt the United States. And so what we're seeing today from Poilievre is a good opening day. And Canada First, I think, will work as an effective policy if it's defined in a way that is not anti-American, because the stupidity of this anti-American booing the anthems, going after Wayne Gretzky because he dares to be a friend of Donald Trump.
Poilievre, who is speaking in Gatineau, Quebec, as the Liberal leader Mark Carney is now inside Rideau Hall, meeting with Her Excellency Governor General Mary Simon for an election that is expected on April 28th. Let's go back to the Conservative leader right now.
And public centers on the servants.
So I think what we have to do is remember this is an election race. Mark Carney wants an election walk. He's not a good campaigner. He's a very weak campaigner. He basically delivers the same speech wherever he goes. And Poilievre is a good campaigner. He's been in this business of politics his whole life. I agree that that's his greatest strength. It's also his greatest deficit. But in terms of who has a better view for Canada, it's obviously Pierre Poilievre. Between these two, this is a contest between these two. Singh is not even in the running. He's not even in the game. He's going to lose his own seat, and he will not be leader of the NDP after this election. Good riddance. He has been nothing but a horrible stumbling block. And we'll go back.
Unleash our resource production, bring home our jobs. That's bad news for President Trump, because it means we're going to be bringing back not only the investment the Liberals have driven south, but also becoming more self-reliant and sovereign to stand on our own feet and stand up to President Trump. That is how we put our country first, and it's how we bring real change to Canadians.
Thank you. Next question. Prochaine question.
Bonjour, Monsieur Poilievre, Christian Noël de Radio-Canada.
Radio-Canada.
Les gens dans la rue nous disent,
Bon matin.
The people here, good morning,
dans la
you
rue nous
two.
disent qu'ils
People are
cherchent
telling
un
us that
capitaine Canada pour se
they're
protéger de Donald Trump.
looking for a Captain Canada to
antidote.
protect.
So I want to have a look at this poll today. It just came out. Abacus Status poll has the Conservatives 3 points ahead of the Liberals and the NDP sinking even further. And I found this interesting because on election day, we've got 39% in this poll for the Conservatives, and we have 36%. I can barely see this myself. but it's 36, 39, 36, and the NDP are almost at single digits now. So it's quite incredible how the Conservative vote has fallen, but I don't believe it's as low as some of these pollsters, like especially Ecos, Angus Reid, and Leger. I don't believe the Liberals are in a commanding lead, and I don't believe the Liberals are even ahead. I think the Conservatives have maintained that lead, and that we're getting skewed polling, and we're getting what the mainstream media wants us to hear, which is that Mark Carney is the answer. He's the answer maybe for the Liberal Party. And we'll see. The longer he's out there, I don't think he can survive a 35-day campaign. I think he's going to make a lot of mistakes. And, I mean, listen, remember this. This is what Mark Carney likes to say when he's standing in front of.
And something that my government is going to do is to use all of the powers of the federal government, including the emergency powers of the federal government, to accelerate the major projects that we need in order to build this economy and take on the Americans. I gotta say,
Emergency powers. The minister who invoked emergency powers was called the Emergencies Act to crush free speech and to crush dissent and to end a peaceful protest. And by the way, I haven't commented on Pat King, his situation, where now the Crown is appealing what I thought was a relatively just verdict of house arrest for 30 days. I don't think he should have been charged at all, but I think he got out of that relatively unscathed. Now, the Crown wants him to go through more lawfare. That's what the Emergencies Act was all about, intimidating Canadians. That's what Mark Carney is all about. Let's not forget that Mark Carney is somebody who had 3 passports, 3, and he thinks Canadians are Europeans.
With you, Mr. President, I want to ensure that France and the whole of Europe works enthusiastically with Canada, the most European of non-European countries, determined like you to maintain the most positive possible relations with the United States. Canada is a reliable, trustworthy, and strong partner of France, which shares our values and lives them through action during this age of economic and geopolitical crises.
They're the ones that have
Mark, you
benefited
look like you
from
were about
foreign
to.
interference.
Yeah, it was a
And we
tell.
also
As a
call on the
European,
government
you
to
know,
have
as a
the foreign
As a
agent
honorary
European, I'm
European.
European, actually.
Oh, you are?
Yeah,
Oh.
so that Canadians know
So there you go.
if
Welcome,
any
welcome.
foreign or
I
hostile
speaking as a
regimes are
European,
intervening
I like to say
in
following.
our democracy so that we can expose that and protect ourselves.
En français, s'il vous plaît.
Merci
And
beaucoup.
French, please.
J'ai
Thank you
déjà
very much.
We missed
I've
this
already
question in English.
had this clearance. I've been in
Trying
cabinet.
to stay abreast
So
of
this
everything.
is not an issue at all in terms of the warnings. The security agents have the power already to inform me, or if I or someone other than me is threatened, they can do that. But I will not do it by giving the government power on what I can say or see, especially after seeing the politicization that the Liberals have done with this issue. Thank you. This concludes our press conference. Okay, see you later.
So we should be having the announcements shortly. I want to show you a clip of Danielle Smith, but I want to make sure we're not going directly to Mark Carney here.
Eco-extremist former Environment Minister Stephen Guilbeault is still in cabinet. But that shouldn't surprise any of us, given that the new Prime Minister is a whole new level of climate zealot and eco-extremist. From his decades-long push for net zero banking that sought to make it impossible for banks to invest in oil and gas, to his promise now to massively increase carbon taxes on our industry, make no mistake, he wants to eviscerate our oil and gas industry. It's right in his book. In Canada, our national identity, unity, our freedom, and our future are at a monumental crossroads. It is likely that soon Canadians will be headed to the ballot box to be able to vote in the most pivotal federal election that we have had in our lifetimes. My friends, there is only one real choice for Canada for our next Prime Minister. There is only one leader who will dismantle the nation-killing policies of the Liberals and NDP, and that, my friends, is Federal Conservative Party leader Pierre Poilievre. I have faith that Pierre will unleash Canada's energy sector like we have never seen before. He will free Alberta from being landlocked by the federal laws and policies we've had to endure. He will bring back law and order to our cities and fix the Liberals' open border immigration system. He will fix the bloated budget. He will rebuild our distinguished military and end the leftist lunacy that we have had to suffer under for 10 long years.
Most pivotal election in our lifetime? I think it might well be. And clearly, that's something Doug Ford is not prepared to do. Danielle Smith, yes, she should be out there supporting a federal conservative. So should Doug Ford. Even though he's a faux conservative, he truly is a red Tory. He truly is a progressive conservative, even though that's an oxymoron. How can you be progressive and conservative at the same time? I had a professor, Carlson, used to say that. He was from Georgia, and he used to say, progressive conservative, that's an oxymoron. And it is. That's precisely what it is. But Doug Ford is not out there supporting Pierre Poilievre. Doug Ford is out there calling for unity with Mark Carney. He's calling for unity on Team Canada. That is where Pierre Poilievre is not pulling. It used to be Team Trudeau, now it's Team Carney. I think we're about ready here.
Conservatives over the next number of days. You're looking there, or you were just a moment ago, at the podium set up outside of Rideau Hall. Inside those doors, Mark Carney is meeting with Her Excellency Governor General Mary Simon to trigger this election. I'll throw things back to Omar, who can talk a little bit more about how close this race is going to be. Omar?
And it has certainly actually become very close, especially in the past few weeks. We've got Nick Nanos, who, of course...
So I want to move to another clip here until Carney makes a stage.
Mark Carney was in Edmonton yesterday to meet with Danielle Smith. Shortly after the meeting, Smith put out a list of demands for the next Prime Minister, including, among other things, ending the prohibition on single-use plastics. She said if these demands were not met within 6 months of the new mandate, there would be a national unity crisis. Are you willing to commit right now to meeting the demands that that Premier Smith has enumerated?
I think Premier Smith's demands are very reasonable. You'll have to see the rest of our platform roll out in due course, but she was making clear that Mark Carney's using weasel words. He's pretending that he suddenly, 30 days before an election, changed his entire radical, net zero, keep it in the ground ideology. Mr. Carney, I can't even believe he would have the audacity to show up in Edmonton. He opposed the Northern Gateway pipeline in a committee testimony while his company was buying pipelines in the Middle East. That pipeline would have created jobs for Edmontonians. It would have been a boom for Northern Alberta. And all the money that would have rushed into Edmonton would have created opportunities. And he opposed it. It's on the record. He supports carbon taxes in Canada while he invests in American coal. He yesterday, his environment minister confirmed that the energy cap will stay in place if the Liberals are in office. So, despite the fact that they're trying to put on this mask last minute before the election, make no mistake, a fourth Liberal term will be exactly like the previous three. It has been the lost Liberal decade. And do we want, this is the question Canadians are going to have to answer, do we want a fourth term of Liberals who block resources, tax our people, drive up our costs, unleash crime in our community, and make us weak and defenseless facing the Americans? Or do we want to put Canada first for a change by axing taxes, unleashing our resources, building homes, locking up criminals, rebuilding our military, standing up to the Americans, and putting Canada first?
I'm going to go back to Nick Nanos is on now, and sometimes he's interesting. Sometimes he's not.
What it speaks to is that this is a real horse race, that, Toronto is better for the Liberals than it was under Justin Trudeau, but it's still, a lot of ridings are too close to call, especially when we get into the west part of Toronto in the 905 area.
And Nick, it probably speaks to the shifting targets of campaign itineraries as well, right? Seeing and tracking that polling and seeing where leaders need to spend their time. The fact that the Conservative leader, Pierre Poilievre, has started his day in the Ottawa area and in Gatineau and is going to be in North York and the Toronto area later this evening says something, that he's seeing perhaps the cracks in that area.
Yeah, and the thing is the path to victory for both the Liberals and the Conservatives is basically in Toronto in the 905 and also in areas like Vancouver, because those are the ones that are really up for grabs. And it's basically street by street, community by community, riding by riding in a lot of these. And the thing is, it's too early to tell, Omar, what will happen. Both Pierre Poilievre and Mark Carney have not run in national elections as leaders of their parties. They are new individuals. This will be the first time for both of them. It'll be trial by fire because of the impact, I'll call it the overhang, of Donald Trump and how he represents another wild card for all of the federal party leaders that they'll have to grapple with, basically on an hour-by-hour basis throughout the campaign.
Is there a reason why we've seen this decline, or can you even say in the polling numbers for the Conservatives? We were talking a lot about the threat coming from the U.S., but to establish that causal connection and how each leader has addressed that concern, can we make that with the data that you've come up with?
Yeah, what's interesting is that when we look at the numbers, at the end of 2024, the last group to go to the Conservatives and to desert the Liberals were women voters. And what we saw is almost immediately after Justin Trudeau stepped down, women voters started to move back to the Liberals. And, for the Liberals, women are a big part of their winning constituency. And the same thing for the Conservatives, men are a big part of the Conservative winning strategy. So we saw groups of voters, Liberals, Quebecers, for example, suburban individuals start to drift back to the Liberals with the stepping down and resignation of Justin Trudeau, Trump being on the agenda and attacking Canada, and now with Mark Carney. So there's a little bit of newness. I think the interesting thing, Omar, is that there's going to be a lot of similarities between Pierre Poilievre and Mark Carney, right? They're both talking about hope and change.
Well,
and
looks like we got to move here.
Maybe this election is going to come down to capability and likability for both of those leaders, because a lot of the other policy issues, I think, are fairly similar.
Nick Nanos, thank you as always for analysis. We'll be talking to you a lot over this 37-day campaign. I'm sure of that, Nick. Thank you. And let's get back to Vassy Kapelos, who is standing by at Rideau Hall, where we are expected to hear from the Liberal leader moments from now. In fact, he is inside Rideau Hall meeting with Governor General Mary Simon.
And one point about Donald Trump, I really believe he made that announcement about endorsing Mark Carney and distancing himself from Pierre Poilievre to help Pierre Poilievre, because Donald Trump is a bizarre man at times, and it's always necessary to understand Donald Trump in terms of the strategic edge. He's thinking sometimes 2 or 3 chess moves ahead. Often it seems like he's frenetic. He's going day by day, hour by hour. But I believe this is a strategic attempt by Donald Trump to help Pierre Poilievre because he knows he's not popular with a lot of Canadians. And I think all right. Let's remember though, what kind of a leader this guy is. And we're just
my strength is I know how the world works. I know how to get things done. I'm connected. I can deliver for the country. And my weakness is, people will charge me as being elitist or a globalist, to use that term, which is, well, that's exactly, it happens to be exactly what we need.
So the next time you hear Mark Carney say he's a lot like those conservatives, he's a globalist, has been his entire career. And I encourage you to read the Substack we did on Mark Carney. It's not over yet because we're now about to enter an election campaign. So we've got to get the information out there about who this man, Mark Carney, is. His connection to environmental extremism and his hypocrisy. Running a firm like Brookfield Asset Management that was investing in the fossil fuels he was trying to stop the production of in Canada. That's who Mark Carney is. Will the real Mark Carney stand? This is a man who has claimed Karl Marx and Vladimir Lenin as two of the influencers in his political philosophy. Well, that's called communism. But Mark Carney likes to pretend that he understands the private sector so well. And he is China's man. There's no question. He has close ties to China. He supports China's environmental policies, even though they are far greater polluters in terms of real pollution and greenhouse and emitters of greenhouse gases, which Mark Carney really hates. They're not net zero at all. But Mark Carney is prepared to be subservient to China. And this is all very, very dangerous. So we're still waiting for Mark Carney to come outside. I don't want to hear the talking heads on CTV right now because I don't like any of them. And it's the usual analysis that Mark Carney needs to be exposed, and we need to continue to do that. And I think over the next 37 days, I counted 35, but 37, we're going to see Mark Carney in a clearer light. And Canadians who think this guy is just serious enough, just moderate enough to be the kind of leader Canada wants are going to wake up. They're not going to get woke. They're going to wake up to what Mark Carney is all about and what these liberals have been doing for the past decade. We have the lowest GDP. We have sunk below most other Western nations during this 10 years of Justin Trudeau. It has been absolutely devastating. But yet, that's all we hear about. And we got to find this one here because this is Mark Carney talking about steel. And if you think Mark Carney is a smart economist, and he's a PhD, so he must understand the subject matter. Well, he understands it so little, he doesn't think Canadians use steel anymore.
But the large polluters pay. And so what happens...
But does that not ultimately trickle down?
No, because what the big companies are producing, by and large, are not products that we are consuming. There's some element of that, but by and large, a steel company, how much steel are you using these days, Todd? I mean, not as much we used to. So anyway, so that's how much steel are you using these days, Todd?
How much steel are you using? Well, I don't know. The last time I looked around the house, I had a lot of implements made of steel. We have a stove, a fridge, and there's steel in the dishwasher. Yeah, there's plastic in it, but there's steel too. And what about the car? Yeah. And if you take a bus, well, there's steel in it too. But I don't think Mark Carney really has a nuanced view of how Canadians. He has been a globalist for so long. He has been wrapped up in his environmental agenda, his net zero agenda for so long that he cannot relate to ordinary people. This was clear yesterday when he was at a photo op, basically, with workers behind, hard hats behind him. They didn't even want to acknowledge he was there. They refused to stand behind him. Those are agonizing photo ops to watch anyway, because I always feel sorry for these workers who are forced to stand behind any politician. I call it firing line photo ops. And people used to always see those in community newspapers, just the still shots. Politicians increasingly like them. I don't know why, because I don't think they're effective. But the hard hats in this photo, the men present did not want to shake his hand or even acknowledge that he was there. And I'm just listening in here, and I'm still not seeing. Mark Carney is taking his time with Mary Simon. There's no question about that. Let's go to something else. A carbon tariff is potentially the worst thing that Mark Carney is introducing.
Third thing we're going to do is to ensure that there's fair competition for our companies and that we penalize high polluting foreign imports. So we're going to develop a carbon border adjustment mechanism. What that does is promote jobs here at home. It prevents carbon leakage abroad. And it aligns Canada with our allies who are still engaged in the fight against climate change.
So I'm not going to be watching all of Mark Carney. No, we'll see how it goes. I know it can be agonizing to do that. And this is why, I came prepared today with a lot of material. But that, everything about this man is globalist.
But the system we have now has actually broken down, only we haven't quite recognized it. A decline in the value of the dollar is necessary in order to compensate for the fact that the U.S. economy will remain rather weak, will be a drag on the global economy. China will emerge as the motor replacing the U.S. consumer, a decline in the value of the dollar, a managed decline.
Now, this is very interesting because this is Mark Carney's philosophy. He wants to essentially replace the U.S. dollar with the Chinese yuan. And so how is this going to work when he's negotiating with Donald Trump? If he's been an advocate over the years with George Soros of replacing the U.S. currency with the Chinese currency. this is extremely problematic. And I suggest this is going to hurt Mark Carney as much as anything in his quiver of ideological arrows, which are all toxic and poisonous. And this is not a man who is going to be effective as a prime minister, because, as I said earlier, he's not a leader. He's a manager. You need more than a manager in front of your country, especially at a time like this. Now, Donald Trump, like him or not, he's a leader as well as a manager. I would suggest, based on what Liz Truss has said about Mark Carney's performance as the governor of the Bank of England, and actually what Stephen Harper said about Mark Carney as the governor of the Bank of Canada, even his management skills are lacking. He's not effective. He's not an effective manager, and he's no leader. He's no leader at all. So I'm going to go to one more here. Now,
David Cochrane, that Marco Mendicino will be the chief of staff for Mark Carney. So, but we don't know at this stage whether or not that is going to be part of a transition period or a permanent move as well. We know that Marco Mendicino certainly was a former public safety minister, and he said he would not be seeking re-election, left the party over a disagreement really when it came to foreign policy.
Marco Mendicino, who, of course, if you remember the Freedom Convoy and the invocation of the Emergencies Act, it was Marco Mendicino who mused about using tanks against peaceful protesters. Marco Mendicino, who lied about Chinese police stations in Canada, who was one of the worst public safety ministers, probably the worst public safety minister we have had. Marco Mendicino, chief of staff. Now, don't worry about the optics that Carney is putting there, because they're designed to make you forget 10 years of liberal mismanagement, about 10 years of drift, 10 years of destruction under the Trudeau Liberals, and to make you think that Mark Carney is somehow different, that Mark Carney is...
Bureau du Journal de Montréal. Merci de répondre à nos questions. En une semaine, vous avez promis vous avez déjà éliminé une partie de la taxe sur le carbone. Vous avez promis d'annuler la hausse sur les gains en capital. Vous avez ouvert la porte au projet de pipeline. Et vous avez aussi promis d'annuler la TPS sur l'achat d'une première maison. Ouais. Ma question est simple. Pourquoi vous n'êtes pas présenté pour le Parti conservateur?
Il y a plusieurs raisons pour lesquelles.
Here we go.
Get from the grandeur of Rideau Hall. And I was there because I was putting up my hand to run for the leadership of the Liberal Party of Canada. And I was doing that because I knew our country needed to take action. We needed to act to fix our economy. We needed to act to fight the Americans. We needed to act to deal with Donald Trump's tariffs. Il y a 9 jours, notre nouveau gouvernement a prêté serment. Et nous sommes immédiatement
and we immediately
à l'action.
Move to
Cette semaine, nous avons conclu un nouvel accord portant sur la défense nationale avec l'Australie pour protéger le
Canada.
Nous avons renforcé nos relations en matière de sécurité avec la France et le Royaume-Uni pour protéger les Canadiens et les Canadiennes. Nous avons lancé des discussions sur de nouveaux accords commerciaux avec l'Union européenne pour aider davantage les entreprises canadiennes. We eliminated the tax on carbon for consumers, for small businesses, and for farmers to end the division that it was creating amongst Canadians, because we are stronger together. We reversed the increase in the capital gains tax so that builders are encouraged to take risks and be rewarded when they succeed. When I met with the premiers in Ottawa on Friday, we agreed to eliminate barriers to trade and mobility inside our country. And the federal government is leading by committing to legislate the end of all federal barriers to interprovincial trade by July 1st. Together, we will push to create one Canadian economy by Canada Day.
Is he going to hijack
Because
natural
we are
resources?
stronger
You bet.
together. This past week, we acted to protect workers using the proceeds of our retaliatory tariffs against America's unjustified trade actions. We acted to unlock major infrastructure projects and get them moving rapidly, including clean and conventional energy, critical minerals, and new trade corridors with reliable trading partners. We acted to create new supports for farmers and businesses during this trade war. We expanded dental care for millions of more Canadians. And we took all of these actions and more to create the foundation to build a stronger Canada. There is so much more to do to secure Canada, to invest in Canada, to build Canada, to unite Canada. That's why I'm asking for a strong, positive mandate from my fellow Canadians. I've just requested that the Governor General dissolve Parliament and call an election for April 28th. And she has agreed. We are facing the most significant crisis of our lifetimes because of President Trump's unjustified trade actions and his threats to our sovereignty. Our response must be to build a strong economy and a more secure Canada. President Trump claims that Canada isn't a real country. He wants to break us so America can own us. We will not let that happen. We're over the shock of the betrayal, but we should never forget the lessons. We have to look out for ourselves. We have to look out for each other.
It's a
Nous
terrible
savons
speaker.
que nous
We
devons
know
veiller
that
les
we
uns sur
need
les
to
autres.
watch out for each other.
Nous ne pouvons
He is one of the worst speakers I have ever heard in the years I've watched politics. He just doesn't know how to warm up a crowd. Thanks for your comments, by the way. I just love these comments today. I'm 100% with you. Do not let this man
for
fool
us.
you.
We can give ourselves more than any foreign government can take away. And the best way we can deal with this crisis is to build our strength here at home and help people who will be hit hardest by these tariffs. That's the right thing to do. That's the fair thing to do. That's the Canadian thing to do. That's what makes us strong. As part of that strategy, today I'm proposing a middle-class tax cut to help all working Canadians get ahead. We will cut the lowest income tax bracket by 1 percentage point for a middle-class tax cut that will benefit a two-income family by up to $825 a year. Aujourd'hui, je propose de
Today,
réduire les impôts
I
pour la classe
propose
moyenne
to
pour
reduce
aider
taxes for
les
the middle
travailleurs.
class.
He's reducing what, the income tax by 1%? Wow, that's a real incentive. This guy really. I want to know why he was with Giselle Maxwell, and does he know Jeffrey Epstein?
Mandate to deal with President Trump and to build a new Canadian economy that works for everyone. Because I know we need change. Big change. Positive change. You see, my generation was fortunate. For us, there were more opportunities and life was more affordable. You had to work hard, but you could get ahead. That was the bargain. But for the generations that have followed, they're working just as hard or even harder than we did. But they're struggling to pay the rent, to put groceries on the table, and to save for their kids' educations. J'ai passé toute ma carrière
I spent my entire career understanding how the world works and how it could be improved to allow us to get the maximum out of it. That is that's been our priority for the last 9 days, and it was always remain the priority of our new government. It's a big challenge, but I want Canadians to understand that we have everything we need to succeed here in Canada. If we have the right plan, and if we work together, because building a strong Canada, we need everybody, and we'll have to have good leadership.
It's easy to be negative about everything when you've never fixed anything. It's easy to be negative about everything when you've never built anything, when you've never had to make a payroll. But negative slogans aren't solutions. Anger isn't action. Division isn't strength. Negativity won't win a trade war. Negativity won't pay the rent or the mortgage. Negativity won't bring down the price of groceries. And negativity won't make Canada strong. Nous avons vu
We've seen
la négativité et la division
where negativity and division
des États-Unis.
led the United States.
Nous sommes plus forts.
We're stronger
Nous sommes unis.
when we're united.
Ils vont
They will
s'affaiblir
weaken
parce qu'ils ne le
because
sont
they
plus.
are no longer united.
Unissons-nous
So
en cette période de crise.
where are we in this crisis?
I love Canada. Our country has given me everything. I stood up in Edmonton 2 months ago, and I'm standing here today because I want to give it all back to Canada. So that every Canadian kid, whether they're growing up in Nanaimo or Montreal or St. John or Scarborough or Inuvik, has the same opportunities that I had, the same hope, the same confidence in a brighter future. It's time for all of us to come together and be strong. So I'm asking for your vote so we can be Canada strong. Canada fort.
Canada strong.
Vive le Canada.
Long live Canada.
And with that, we're going to tune out because I don't want to hear any more of Mark Carney's profiteering and his propaganda. So, April 28th, I will be on the air every day during the entire campaign. I can promise you that. And we are going to bite through all of this nonsense. We are not going to let Mark Carney take this election. But here's what I wanted to talk with all of you about. The recent Ontario election had digital voting by a company I'm not going to mention by name, but we all know what that company is. And everywhere that company has run elections, there have been problems, huge problems. That same company ran Mark Carney's leadership camp race. He won 87% of the vote in every riding across Canada. That's impossible. Was it rigged? Yeah, I think it was. Will the federal election be rigged? I'm going to find out tomorrow from Elections Canada if we're going to go to digital voting in this election. If we are, God help this country. And Canadians should be rising up and saying, don't try to fix it if it ain't broken. We do not need digital voting. It is rife with errors and problems and is very susceptible to being abused. Much easier to rig an election when it's that way. So that's my question tomorrow. I'm going to let you know if I get an answer. And if I don't get that answer tomorrow, you'll know right away. So look what Mark Carney did here. And this will be about the last thing I want to share with you. They kicked out a guy who won his nomination so they could install Mark Carney. This is the most corrupt liberal regime. He gets everything handed to him. He thinks he's entitled now to stay on as prime minister. We're going to deny him that. He's not going to get away with it. So thank you so much for watching today. This was difficult to navigate today, but I'm so happy you joined me. And before I eat up an entire hour, I want to say goodbye for now. Back again tomorrow at 10 with all the news you need to know. And let's continue to resist, even more so now than ever.